Vault number 154 is David Stagg. Born in Townsville, David played one Origin match for Queensland, game one of the 2006 series, where he started in the second row alongside Matt Scott. David made his NRL debut in 2003 with the Brisbane Broncos, going on to play 112 games for the club and playing in the centres in Brisbane's 2006 grand final win. In 2007, David moved to the Bulldogs, where he played 94 games and was a member of Canterbury's grand final side of 2012. David finished his career back at Brisbane in 2015, a serious knee injury bringing the curtain down on a tremendous career. Well, David Stagg, thanks for your time. What does it mean to you to be a FOG and come into this building and see your name up on that wall?
Yeah, it's still mind-boggling to know the players that played before you, and even now, since I've retired. Growing up as a young boy, loving rugby league and, idolising those players, the likes of, Wally Lewis, Alan Langer, Kevin Walters. To then be able to even just walking into here today and seeing those names up on the wall and your name's alongside them. So it's pretty special.
So take us back to the start. Let's go from the very beginning. Born in Townsville, how long were you there for and how did you get to Brisbane?
Born in Townsville. Wasn't there long. My father was involved with AGC, which is now Westpac, so he did a little bit of moving around in the early days, all before I got to Brisbane for school life, so Rockhampton, Mackay, back to Townsville, down to Brisbane, I think in 1988, if that serves me correctly. Brisbane, done all my schooling in Brisbane, and Brisbane's very much home.
Grew up on the north side, when in a rugby league family, a family of boys as well, so are you always destined, I suppose, to play rugby league?
I don't think there was ever a conversation that we weren't not going to play rugby league. I was obviously fortunate with both my parents that they encouraged us to play a number of different sports growing up, and had the opportunity, I guess like every young Australian girl or boy growing up in the 90s, you played cricket, swimming in summer, and rugby league was the sport in the winter, but I wasn't from a lack of trying other sports, from tennis to softball to rugby union to touch. The list goes on, and we were lucky enough, I'm one of four boys and we all had that opportunity, so our parents were certainly kept very busy on weekends, but when push came to shove, rugby league was always the favoured sport.
When were you noticed? When did it start becoming serious for you?
I guess it's once you get to high school, into the international football, growing up at a stage there where, the Broncos in particular, I guess, scholarships were around, where you had the opportunity, they'd support you with your schooling and education. That was obviously, the aspirations at that stage, to be a part of that. So I love rugby league. I love being a part of the team, the mateship, the challenges that come with it every week. And, education was still a very, very big focal point for me through school. And it wasn't actually probably until under 15s that I, really wanted to think, give it a red hot crack and see where it takes me.
So how'd you end up at the Broncos?
So I finished school in 2000. I was playing out at Redcliffe at that stage in the underage competition. We went through to the Colts under 19s comp. That was just the natural progression into senior football. At that particular stage, the Roosters were affiliated with the Dolphins, obviously through Arthur Beetson. I started to get a little bit of recognition, I guess, just in the local league, and had a pretty successful under 19s campaign. transitioned through to Redcliffe into the Q Cup side in 2002, where they won the comp. At the back end of that year, the Roosters sort of reached out to see whether I'd be interested in an opportunity to go down to Sydney and see how things progressed. So, look, I was obviously very happy to be in a position where I had that opportunity. Very close to my family. So the biggest, I guess, hurdle for me, or that I was uncertain or unsure about, was moving away from home. So again, a good family friend of ours by the name of Graham Baird. He was coached by Wayne Bennett back in the late 70s at South. And just in conversations, he said, well, why don't I reach out to Wayne and see if there's an opportunity for you to stay in Brisbane and see if there's a chance there with the Broncos. So that was in November 2002. Arranged a time, caught up with Wayne, with my dad, and conversation that he was willing to give me that chance.
And a few months later, you're playing first grade.
It wasn't that long afterwards, I guess, and it's for me at the time, growing up, the Broncos of the 90s, that was the best of the best, the team that they had I never ever thought, if I was ever going to play first grade, that it was going to be with the Brisbane Broncos, purely because I was never a standout player. I was, someone that just sort of was a good team man and did my job. So I thought I would have to go to Sydney, but when that chance became a possibility, it was too good to give up. And as you said, 7 months later, I had the opportunity to play. I was playing on Suncorp Stadium, so it all happened very quickly. In
round 18, ironically, against one of your future club, the Bulldogs. So you had to wait a few months to get that taste of the NRL. So take us in the lead up to that, of how you developed as a player and when you thought that you might be a chance to play in the NRL.
Again, it was always, you just work hard, and if the opportunity comes, just be as best prepared as you can to take that chance. And look, there was never really a thought that I was going to play first grade so quickly. Obviously, Kevy Walters was the coach of the Toowoomba Clydesdales at the time, so I was playing reasonably good footy there, and that was a part of my progression, and I certainly was happy with how things were going. Playing in the centres at that stage, I think somehow a few coaches sort of mentioned to me leading up to, around 18s, 19s that, I'd potentially end up in the back row purely just because of my work rate. And I was never the quickest player on the park, but that was sort of always a progression. But I did have a couple of good years there in the centres, playing kick up and at Toowoomba. And I got named, I think I was named on the bench. And Kevy was coach that night, obviously with Origin time and Wayne being away, and I was told that I would be starting in the centres for that game. So, and I think that was probably one of the very few times I actually, last time I played in the centres when I was playing first grade, I sort of permanently moved in a little bit closer while I got moved around a little bit. But it was, I still remember the lead up, or being told that I was going to be playing. Again, my old man and my family obviously are avid Broncos supporters growing up, and to have that opportunity, even if it was only one game, and it was following the year of the baby. I think the baby Broncos were the year before, so there was a fair bit of movement around and media hype about the young up and comers coming through. David with Semi Thaiday as well that night, so he's a couple of years younger than me, but we sort of progressed through the years together. We did get belted, 40-4, I think the score was. At that stage, the Bulldogs were a pretty strong side in the early 2000s, so wasn't the result that we were after, but I managed to get a pretty good one-on-one tackle on Matty Utai that night, so that was probably a highlight in my first game. But yeah, I think not long after that I got moved in a bit closer to the middle.
Did the taste light the fire or inflame your desire to be a permanent member of that team? Was that a real turning point?
Oh yeah, I guess there was probably always a little bit of doubt there. I was probably never the most confident person. Again, being around the likes of, you know, your Shane Webkes, your Petro Simnasivas, your Darren Lockyers, Gordon Tallis, Tony Carroll, the list goes on, you know, but to be a regular in that particular side not long after that, I think towards the back half of 2004, I started to become more of a regular, and then started in the back row in 2005. When Gordy left, I still, you know, to be a part of that side, it was still, took a little while, but I think once I knew what my role within the team was, I didn't have to overplay my hand with the players that you had around you, and you do your job well every week. And Wayne instilled that confidence in me. And I think the players sort of acknowledged that pretty early on too, and that's probably where the confidence comes from, when you know the guys around you, and you don't want to let the players around you down. So that was probably a big driving force for me in what I did, probably throughout my entire career.
And you're making your way into a Broncos side that is on the verge of a premiership. We can look back at history and know that now, that 2006, when you're still a young man, is arguably, with not wanting to put words in your mouth, the greatest year of your career, representing Queensland and winning a premiership. Take us back to 2006 and that building of that side. Did you and the players get the feeling that it was going to be a special year?
I think it's like every year, yeah. That's while it's not spoken about, that's where, you know, everyone wants to be a part of that last weekend. You know, when you're playing professional rugby league, and I guess the mindset was no different with that one. It wasn't you know, every rugby league season there's injuries and there's ups and downs, and you know, we certainly went through a bit of a rough patch throughout the year following the post-Origin series. I do remember we were given a week off, sort of after the series, where we all just got away. We were encouraged to get away from Brisbane, completely get away from rugby league, just to try and reset and refresh. We come back off the back of that, and I think we lost quite a few games moving into the back end of the year. So there was all sorts of, as you know, being a one-team town, all sorts of media scrutiny over the side. We did make some changes, again, due to some injuries towards the back end of the year. One of those obviously being Sean Berrigan moving from the centres into the hooking role. And then we started to get a bit of a roll on and a bit of momentum off the back of that, and we probably timed our run really well. I think we played a game against Melbourne late in the year, and obviously they'd been the pick of the group for that 2006 season, and we didn't win that game, but it was a really good contest, and we took a lot of confidence out of that moving forward into the back end of the year.
Well, let's go back to Origin time. You mentioned there having the break after it. Of course, you were involved in game one of that series. Take us into the lead up of that. When did you feel as though that you were perhaps an Origin player, but listening to your comments about, you know, sometimes not necessarily believing in yourself to a certain extent, did it come as a surprise that you were selected for that game?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there was a little bit of talk early on in the year, again through the media and the lead up with predicted sides and all the rest of it. I'm still only 22 years of age, so you know, and knowing the players the current players amongst the group, you know, you try to focus on your own role each and every week with the club. But obviously, when I do remember the phone call, I was living at Stafford at the time, in my first home actually, and my wife was with me to receive the call. You're always hopeful of receiving that call. But once it happened, it's very, very surreal. My first phone calls to my parents, but I've been selected to play in what a lot consider the pinnacle of rugby league. That was actually the first time that I'd ever been selected for Queensland. So I'd never been selected in any Queensland schoolboy sides or anything prior to that. So to have your first opportunity to pull on a maroon jersey to be at state of origin level was, again, something that I probably didn't really take in till a lot later in my career, to acknowledge that I had that opportunity to do that. Obviously, the result didn't go the way that we would have liked. Obviously, we had a number of changes in 2006. I think there were 7 debutants. Myself and Matty Scott were in the back row. We went down to Sydney. Brett Finch came in, I think, in the last 3 or 4 days prior to the game. So he come out and kicked the match-winning field goal. I think it was 17-16, that one. We lost the first game. And he was man of the match that day. So I certainly remember the details surrounding that particular game. But yeah, as I said, to move then and to be a part of a premiership at the end of 2006, all by the age, I hadn't even turned 23 by this stage, so it was certainly a whirlwind ride that particular season.
You mentioned the word surreal when you found out you're going to play for Queensland. When did the reality set in that you were playing for Queensland?
Obviously, when you first come together, look, I rang my parents with the first phone call. I think my next phone call was Petro, Sivanasiva, Big Pet. Obviously, what do I pack? What do I need? I was all those sort of nervousness of this is actually happening. What do I need for the week? But then obviously, the following morning where you're coming into camp and the players that are around you and the coaching staff that are there, it's something that you need to, and I probably at the time sit back and really enjoy the week because there are those emotions of the nervousness and as I said, that confidence of being there. Do I belong here? That was sort of always sitting in the back of my head as well. So
you remember the score, you remember Brett Finch's effort, you remember a lot about it. But what's the most, I suppose, abiding memory of that game? A lot of players talk about the speed of Origin or how quickly it goes. What stands out the most for you?
Yeah, look, that is the obvious. I guess every level you go up in football, the speed in the game, the intensity in the game, but even just the communication on the field as well. It just all seems to go up another level. While it was in Sydney, coming out and receiving the what's the right word here? Not the booze, but
the warm reception.
Yeah, that's the reception you receive from obviously the New South Wales fans. It was. It's just one of those. It all went so quickly that. But now it's you look back on it and to be, although I only ever played the one game, still to have that opportunity to be a part of, the greats is something that is certainly very nice.
Well, Scott Sattler is trying to formulate the Arthur Beetson Club, all the one-gamers together, so you're in pretty good company in that respect. But having played the one game to start the series and then not being selected again, how did that affect you, and did it have an impact on you, the fact that you played that one game and never got another opportunity?
It did. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's as a 22-year-old to be given that opportunity, and then you're always hopeful that you do get that chance. But unfortunately, when you're a part of a team that go on and have the success that they have for the next 8 years, it's always going to be hard to get back into the side. And Yeah, throughout my career, of course, there's always that fear, am I going to be a one-game player? And yeah, it did take me a little while, even once I retired, to sort of be proud, but be comfortable with what you had achieved. Not only in the game of rugby league, but obviously, being a part of such a select group. There's a lot of people that would give an arm, a leg to give them that chance to play one game for Queensland, and I'm lucky enough to be able to say I've done that. Even walking in today into the, you're looking up on the honour board there, and there are quite a few players and some handy players that have only played one game. So
there's even more that haven't played any.
And you're 100% right. There's a lot of people that are in a position that they'd love to be in the position I'm in. So I'm certainly very grateful for that game.
So 2006, you become a FOG, and you win a premiership. Then you move to Sydney to play for Canterbury. How did that come about?
Again, changing of coaching staff. Wayne left in 2008. Obviously, I still had a year with the Broncos for 2009. But yeah, just through some happenings over the off-season, an opportunity come up with the Bulldogs where they were looking for, I guess, a player in similar position to obviously I like to play in the back row lock. Michael Ennis and Ben Hannett had both recently signed with the Bulldogs, and obviously I got on quite well with those two. And when they were, obviously Kev Moore was a coach, they obviously had gone through a bit of a transition phase themselves where I think 2008 they may have finished Wooden Spoon. Obviously Todd Greenberg had just come in as the CEO. Kev Moore had taken over as head coach for 2009. They'd had a number of players, I think there was up to 7 players that they'd had, new players that had come to the club. And there was an opportunity there where Mick and Ben strongly encouraged Kev to get in touch with me. And then it all sort of happened really quickly. I think it was a week before Christmas. They reached out of 2008. So I'd done virtually the entire, off-season, pre-season, whatever you call, up until Christmas with the Broncos. The Broncos were happy enough for me to move on, and I think by January 3 I was down there training with the Bulldogs. So.
Bit of a blur, bit of a whirlwind, but it wasn't a bad decision. You got through to a grand final, unfortunately beaten by a Melbourne side that knows how to win premierships as well. How would you view your time at the Bulldogs?
I thoroughly enjoyed my time at the Bulldogs. I just had my daughter Paige. She was born in August 2008, so we literally, Tamika, my wife and I, and her were moving down to Sydney. We're both very close to our families. So I know it's only an hour flight, but for us it was a big move at the time. We moved to a club that were very much, there was a lot of similarities and qualities between the Broncos and the Bulldogs. But the Bulldogs were very accommodating. They had a lot of young families. We thoroughly enjoyed our time down there. Got on extremely well with all the admin, the coaching staff, the players. I guess it was a stage of my career where I was turning 26. So, late 20s, you start to play. You've been playing for 4 or 5 years. You're confident with what you're doing. I was given the opportunity to play lock, which was my dream position. And a lot of things just fell into place where 2009 was an unbelievable season where we unfortunately got knocked out in the prelim finals there against Parramatta. But I got back to enjoying rugby league as well, where it was just a whole heap of fun. So yeah, 2009 was a really successful year, and then 2012, to be able to play in another grand final, although it was on the other end of the against Melbourne this time around, I would not change anything. I didn't want to leave the Bulldogs again. My wife and our 2 young children were loving the club, but I had learnt by that stage in professional rugby league that And sometimes we have different new coaches come in and they have different ideas about the way they want to play or different personnel that they want to bring in or they know. 2012 was my last year before I come back to Brisbane, which was home.
Full circle, basically, to finish the career. Sadly, the knee injury may have shortened the career somewhat. Who had the biggest influence on your career?
Oh, look, Mum and Dad, again, the support that they've always given me to be able to give me the opportunity to play, whatever game it is, whatever sport it was, that having them there each and every week was, and knowing that they were supporting me no matter what was really, really comforting. From a rugby league perspective, I've had a number of good coaches throughout my juniors, but a coach that really sticks out for me was Neil Bishop. He was my under-17s coach at Redcliffe. He was the one that sort of, we spoke at length about, I was playing centres at the time, but where I potentially would end up. Knowing that I wasn't one of the schoolboy stars, he gave me some belief in what I was doing and knowing the strengths in my own game, and just to work hard with what you're doing. And it may come a little bit later in life, but there will be, if you keep working, the opportunity will come, and probably come a little bit quicker than I expected around that. So he certainly had a big part there, and we still keep in touch now. So that was, Neil certainly played a big part. And I think Wayne was, it was interesting with Wayne because I guess my strength was my consistency in my game, where Wayne always seems to have that ability to instill consistency within some of the the superstar players. So Wayne sort of didn't always say a lot to me. To a point actually early on that I thought, he's not talking to me, what's going on? I've got to go and make a time to see him to make sure everything's going okay. And I remember he sort of said to me that if you don't hear from me, he said, that's a good thing. You're doing everything right. You just keep doing what you're doing. I remember walking out of that room with, again, some relief there, but knowing what I was doing was right. And just keep doing what you're doing. And, if it ever comes to a point that I'm going to come and talk to you, you're in a little bit of strife. So that always stuck out in my mind as well. Kev Moore to be able to give me the opportunity at the Bulldogs to be able to play the way that I always wanted to play, the freedom. I'd probably developed a bit of a reputation around my defence, or my defensive game. But when I went to the Bulldogs, he gave me a bit more of a freedom to be able to play a little bit with the ball. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I certainly had some really good years down in Sydney from a personal point of view.
How do you reflect? How do you sit here now and look back? I know sometimes players don't like to reflect, but the older you get, the more you're allowed to reflect. Do you look back on 200 NRL games, state of origin representation, and a premiership? How do you reflect on what, from the outside, is a terrific career?
I guess I just look back and am grateful that I was to be able to be a part of, some wonderful teams and some wonderful organisations, which I was involved post-rugby league. I'm still involved with the game now, and I love the fact that I'm able now to pass on what I've learnt throughout my time playing professional sport, and to be able to pass on some of that knowledge to young aspiring players. I'm just grateful that, I guess the big part of me is that if you work hard and you love what you do, you should be happy no matter what. It was just a bonus that I had that chance to be able to play not only one game of NRL, one game, for Queensland, but to be able to play 200 I guess even still now, it's hard to believe. Yeah, grateful is probably the word that sticks out for me.
Well, David Stagg, thank you so much for your time and congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.